Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Town Services and Outreach Committee of the Amherst Town Council to order at 10 a.m. Today is March I've got the wrong,
6. 6.
March 6th. Actually had the wrong agenda in front of me. That was what was confusing me. This meeting is being held via remote means, and we've made efforts to make sure that all members of the public can participate via Zoom, which is permitted under the open meeting law as it's currently in effect. I want to make sure that the other members of the committee, there are 4 out of 5, which is a quorum. So Bob Hagner, can you hear?
Yeah, I'm present.
And Jennifer Taub
Yes, I'm present.
and Council Ryan.
I'm present.
Okay, so what the agenda is, let's see if there's anybody any participants from the public. There's one person, and if the person who's from the public would like to offer public comment, we certainly would welcome the comment you have to offer. So raise your hand and let us know. Okay, so the member of the public who's in attendance has not raised their hand, so we can proceed to the next items. Town manager is in Boston today, and for personal reasons, he is going to try and join us. And we might want to wait for a minute to see if he can join us so that he can answer any questions about the appointments that he has to offer us for consideration. So that we can wait for a moment to see. And in the meantime, we have the minutes of February 20. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Is there anybody who I have no corrections to offer. If everybody's had a chance who's present has a chance to look at them and can take a motion to just approve them and go on. Jennifer?
Okay, I move that we approve the minutes of I'm sorry, I have to bring it up, of the February 20th, 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I'll go back and do a vote. Councilor Ryan?
Aye.
Bob Hegner?
Aye.
Jennifer Taub?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So it's 4-0 with one member absent. And that brings us to going back to the town manager appointments, which is the third item on the agenda. And the town manager has now joined us. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning. Sorry I'm late.
That's all right. And I explained that you are in Boston for personal reasons, that you may not be able to, you may have to limit your time.
Yeah.
So do you want to introduce the appointments? This is something different because it's actually a new body.
Yes, it's different and and it's new. I mean it's also the old body. So if you recall, last year there was a Disability Access Advisory Committee, which is still in existence until March 11th, and the council agreed with the DAAC to create a new body called, at that point, Commission on Disability, but the term of art now is Commission for Persons with Disabilities, and that's what we've named it. We've worked with the commission, the DAAC, plus a town attorney to establish a new charge, which is attached to the appointments. And the appointments, the charge takes into consideration recent Supreme Court rulings about membership and um, things like that, just to sort of a caveat, and tried to bring the charge in alignment with the state law as well, because in some ways they could be in conflict. So there's a footnote there that tries to explain all that from our town attorney. So so with the transition, the DAAC will demise and we will have a new commission for persons with disabilities. Everyone on the current commission, DAAC, would like to continue, and that's what you have in front of you, is to appoint them to that membership. And it also includes a position for a staff member, which I've appointed Pamela Nolan Young, who is our DEI director, but also our liaison to the DAAC, and will be the liaison as well to the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. One member, Elise Link, her term expires on June 30th, and she'd like to fulfill her commitment to the end of her term. But we will be advertising for a new member for the Commission for Persons with Disabilities with all the other vacancies we have, when we start advertising next week, actually. So that will come to you in advance of, hopefully in advance of June 30th. So there's James Krudenmeyer, for a 3-year term, Ian Rodewald and Myra Ross for 2-year terms, Saren Darren and Cody Rooney for a 1-year term, and then Elise Link to complete the remainder of her term, which ends on June 30th. And then ex officio would be Pamela Nolan Young.
And I think it's Jim Crudenier.
Crudenier, is that it? Okay.
I believe so. I've worked with him. He's been the director for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Ryan, you have a question?
No.
Okay. I actually had a couple of questions. One is that it indicates that in the charge that there are certain requirements, including that one person have a member of the family who's disabled. Is that requirement met?
Yes, with Mr. Crudenier.
Okay,
And I think it reflects that in his biography as well.
Okay, because I think he probably qualifies in 2 categories.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. The other question that I had is Ms. Nolan Young is not a resident of Amherst. Everybody else is. Is that
Yes.
correct? We do need, I believe under the charter, we need to note that, and that the council has to waive the requirement of residence. Does that apply to this position?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, Andy. I did not take that into consideration, honestly, because I thought because the state law requires it to be a a member, an elected or appointed member of the town. It didn't talk about residency, so but I should check the charter on that.
Yeah, actually, I have the charter here, and it says members of all appointed multi-member bodies shall be residents of the town at the time of appointment and throughout the term of the appointment, unless otherwise approved by the council. And that sentence that I just read to you is from subsection C of section 3.3 of the charter.
Mhm.
So I think that we would need to have a motion that recommends the appointments and recommends the waiver of the residence requirement of Ms. Nolan Young.
Mhm. Okay, I can work with Athena to get the language right for the council meeting on Monday.
Uh, and we should make sure that our motion recommends that both actions take place. Councillor Jennifer, do you have something?
I'm just confused. Isn't Pamela Nolan Young the staff, providing staff support?
But she's also a voting member according to the charge and the state law.
Just by, okay, I'm sorry, just by being the staff?
No,
Support?
it calls for a member. Um, the state law calls for a one person. Let's see, where say one member shall be either an elected or appointed official of the town.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I have no, I think it's fine to have the waiver, but it just seems like not it seems like, I mean, one may not have a staff person that also lives in the town, but that's, I don't know,
Right.
it's fine. It just
I,
seems
I
redundant.
I think that we have. And I don't know if Athena has an opinion on the topic. Um,
We have staff members who live in other towns on building committees. So, I mean, we haven't done it in the past. It seems like the council's approval of Paul's appointments is inherently an approval in accordance with the charter. So we haven't done it in the past. If you feel like it's something that the council should do for this one, then I'd say go ahead and we can include it in the motion.
do we want to? I think it's the cautious thing to do because I don't think it's going to be a problem. Councilor Ryan, do you have a motion or is that
Well, it's a cautious thing to do, and maybe that's what we'll do, but it would be nice to just get some clarification because there does seem to be a fundamental question. She's a staff member, and the fact that she doesn't live in Amherst doesn't seem, but the charge says something else. It'd be nice to get some clarification from somebody at some point. I don't think we should delay this, and maybe we'll have a waiver added to this motion.
That's
But it'd be nice to know going forward. It seems, well, we just need to know at some point.
Yeah, so there are other committees that have non-residents on them, including the historical commission, which requires a representative from the real estate association, and that person has been filling that lives in Pelham in the past. So and that's again a state requirement that they have someone who's requested by the recent, but I think it's fine to recommend the appointments as shown here, plus to grant a waiver for Ms. Pamela Nolan Young to serve, um, uh, even though she's not a resident of the town.
so? Councilor Ryan, do you want to make a motion or?
Sure, Andy, I'd be happy to. I would move that TSO recommend to the council that the council approve the following appointments by the town manager to the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. James Kudneier for a 3-year term to expire June 30, 2028. Ian Rodewalt and Myra Ross for 2-year terms to expire June 30, 2027. Saren Darren and Cody Rooney for 1-year terms to expire June 30, 2026. And Elise Link for a 1-year term to expire June 30, or short term, excuse me, to expire June 30, 2025. And Pamela Nolan Young as ex officio. And in addition, we recommend that the council approve a waiver for Ms. Nolan Young since she is not a resident of the town of Amherst, and the charge apparently, or state law requires that.
I second.
So there's been a motion that's been made and seconded. And I think we've had discussion opportunity. unless somebody raises their hand, we'll proceed to a vote. And start with Bob Hegner,
Aye.
Jennifer Taub,
Yes,
and Council Ryan.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so this is 4-0. One member absent.
And thank you. And good catch, Andy.
Athena, did you reach out to Councilor Lord?
Heard back.
Is she joining us later, or we don't know? Okay. So what we want to do then, we've approved the minutes, we've dealt with item 3, we've asked for public comment, and there was none offered during the when I offered public comment, and I think we still have only the one person who's there, so we're ready to go on to talk about Southeast Street briefly. And I gather that Guilford Mooring is not going to be able to join us this morning, or he's at least not present at the time. I noted that he did put in a request. It was for both engineering work for FY26 as a to JCPC, and for FY27 for construction costs. And I was somewhat surprised by the amount of the money that he was asking for engineering work for this particular project. It seemed higher than what I recall he was saying, but I assume, Paul, that you've reviewed that, and so we know where we are.
I think
Yeah.
that's I think it's actually being reviewed by JCPC at this point in time.
Yeah, because I think that Kathy will ask that question of JCPC about, because I think it was 500,000 if I recall correctly. I don't have it in front of me.
Yes, it's 500,000.
And
and what is that for?
for engineering work, and it's for the FY26 budget.
And that's different than construction costs.
The construction costs are listed in the 5-year plan.
Okay.
And they're listed for FY27. And I think that he put a number of 6 million in for that. Councilor Ryan, did you have questions? Because I want to focus just on process, because we were
Well,
really.
it's a question about that 500,000 and what it will, again, it's been a while, I'm trying to remember, but essentially that would allow us to make a decision between a signalized intersection and a roundabout. Is that what that money is going to be used for? And then we decide which one we want. So it's 500,000 to be spent just to get us to the point where we can decide between option A and option B.
I think, yeah, I think what Mr. Mooring said last time to this committee was, in order to look at options, you really need to do the full traffic analysis. And I think we need further conversation with him about that. And that's why that number is so big, because you hire an engineering company to come in, do a full, blown plan that shows both options, and then you can make a judgment. I think that's not, not sure if we're all on the same page on that, quite frankly.
Because I guess just to finish my thought, if we could just
I'm
make
sorry.
if we could make a decision right now, we wouldn't have to spend 500,000. We could just go with option A or option B. But in order to make a decision about option A or option B, it looks like we're obviously gonna have to spend some money, and it may be a lot of money.
I guess the question is, it would help to have his thoughts on the subject. is whether we should, how the timing works and whether we need to develop full plans for both in order to do this, or whether there's preliminary work. But I think that that's something that is a management question, and because we don't want to require more money be spent on this phase than necessary, but we want to have enough to know that at least that they're feasible and workable alternatives that have been suggested. And the other thing I don't know is whether he's also thinking about still working on something with the Belchertown Road intersection. Councillor Ryan?
Someone else should speak.
Councillor Jennifer?
Yeah, my question is, before, when they made the recommendations were made for the 4 roundabouts, wasn't a traffic analysis conducted? I mean, I would think they would have done a full, so do we have to do another one to come up with alternatives to the 4 roundabouts?
I think Guilford Roy would need to address that, but I think the idea is that when you redesign something, then you already have the traffic flows. They have the traffic.
Oh,
We
we
just
lose
lost
Paul?
Paul.
Yeah, we
Paul's
lost
laptop
Paul.
died. He his battery died. He gave me a heads up that might happen. Sorry about that.
I gotta try that trick sometime.
Disappear.
Whoops.
So
Well, maybe one of you can answer that. I mean, so I'm confused. They did a full traffic analysis, and that led to the recommendation for the 4 roundabouts. Do we
they
need
did
another full traffic?
analysis, but I don't know. I mean, I think that that's where we really need Guilford, and we don't have him to
Well,
provide that insight and information as to what we can do. It and how much needs to be done. But that's also a question. JCPC is obviously isn't going to want to put more money into it than necessary, but will want to put enough money in. And I think that if we do anything, it's probably to just indicate that we want to make sure that there's enough money that allows for both an analysis, an assurance that 2 options are both viable, and that more complete work can be done after a decision is made by the council on which of the 2 options that it approves. And I'm also assuming that this committee will make a decision at some point after getting consultation as we deem appropriate to either recommend, say that 2 options are viable, we have a preference, 2 options are viable, we don't have a preference, or that only one is viable. And that's the choice of which we will have to make, and when we have sufficient information, and we want to make sure that we have enough funds available to be able to make those assurances to the council. Bob?
yeah, I just wanted to say that JCPC has not had a chance to really review this in depth, but I think DPW is scheduled for the 19th, a meeting on the 19th, which everyone is invited to attend. It's in the afternoon. It's at 4 in the afternoon, so it's kind of late. But I mean, just looking at the $6 million price tag, we can't afford it. I mean, I don't see how we can afford it. not with the other borrowing that we have to do. So we have to take a very hard look at this particular project and see what really needs to be done in order to make the traffic flow the way that we think it needs to flow, and pedestrian safety and all that. But I can tell you that, I mean, if it's really going to cost $6 million, I don't know how we can afford it. I really don't. I mean, we can't afford $6 million for road paving, let alone for, redoing a very short section of road. So anyway, that's just, I think JCPC is going to take a very hard look at this project and take a hard look at these cost estimates. So you may want to wait until that. I don't know. I think Guilford should be there to talk about the project. So
And the date on that is March 19th.
I believe it's March 19th is when it's scheduled. I'll verify that and let you know, Andy, and then you can send it around to everybody.
Yeah, you can send it to the entire
Okay.
committee just because it's
not
not advocating
deliberative. Okay.
It's not an item that we're going to control the agenda of the
Right.
other committee. I mean, you've raised another issue that needs to be thought about is that if they're both options are viable and one is less expensive for construction than the other, then that's information that the council and our committee therefore would be interested in having.
Yeah, we won't have that information until, unless we spend the money to look at both options.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I know I've raised this before more than once, but I'm if do we really need to do all this road reconfiguration? If the students are taking the school bus and that can be encouraged. They said that since COVID, there are fewer students taking the school bus. It seems crazy for parents to be driving kids to school when they can take the school bus. COVID is over. Do we really need this major road reconstruction? I mean, how many how many additional car rides are there going to be coming from the students who used to go to Wildwood, now going to the Fort River location? $6 million is a lot of money. I mean, $1 million is a lot of money. So that I would, just raise whether we can go back to the drawing board to begin with, and how much of this, road reconstruction really, what level of increased traffic are we really looking at? But maybe that can be raised in JCPC. And could that, Andy, if we have the date, well, we will for the JCPC meeting, could that go in your report? Because I think all the counselors might, want to know when it is and have the option to tune into that meeting.
Yes, and obviously I would need to check with the chair of JCPC, who I believe is Kathy Shane again.
Kathy, yes.
Councilor Ryan?
This is a question that probably only Guilford can answer, but I'll ask it anyway, and maybe you guys can at least shed some light for me. That $6 million figure strikes me as just a placeholder. I mean, he hasn't the slightest idea how much this is going to cost, correct? But that's just, he threw that in there, or is there something behind it that, I'm not saying it would be, yeah. Is that the understanding? It's just a placeholder? Because he doesn't know which, I mean, is it going to be a synchronized intersection, be one intersection, two? I'm
That
sorry?
would be my assumption too.
Yeah, it's not based on anything. In order to base it on something, we're gonna have to, I guess what Bob is saying, and I guess I need to get into my head, is in order to make any kind of decision, no matter what it finally costs, we're gonna have to spend some money. We're gonna have to spend some money to figure out how much this is actually gonna cost us. There's no way around that. Now, whether it's 500,000, that's a whole nother question, but it sounds like it's unavoidable to spend some. I mean, we already spent some money to get the 4 roundabouts. And if we'd gone ahead with that plan and just said, okay, here's what the experts say, maybe you don't like it, maybe you don't like roundabouts, but maybe it looks funky. But if we just said, go ahead, do it, then what? They'd have to spend some money to figure out how much it's going to cost total. Is that, I mean, I just don't know. I don't know whether that 6 million was based on the original 4 roundabout proposal or whether it's just a placeholder. And whether if we had just gone ahead with the 4 roundabouts, we would be saving ourselves at least some time. I don't know about money, but now we're going to have to spend some more money to figure out an alternate set of options. Okay, Guilford's not here, so
Yeah,
that's the answer.
I know. And again, I'm a little bit uncertain as to where
Okay.
he is, Guilford is in his thinking about moving forward with the Belchertown Road roundabout, because is that really a part of this plan or not? It's south of the school. Um, the main street is very close to the entrance to the school, so that becomes why that intersection is important. But uh, the one at Belchertown Road, College Street, is it's a little less certain as to whether that's necessary to address that change.
Well, given the money woes that Bob is pointing out, it would seem like that's not going to happen no matter what. I mean, I would prefer, I would, in best of all possible worlds, I would like to have it happen, but it seems, first of all, that's just off the table financially. The question is, how can we afford even anything that will at least make the traffic bearable once I mean, it actually won't be done when the new school is built. So maybe we'll have to maybe build a new school and see what happens.
Exactly, right. I may be proven
And
wrong,
then
but
if all
maybe
hell
right.
breaks loose, but I mean, that's 2 more years at least of awfulness. And so, but that's another option, is you just say, okay, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't really have the information, and what we need to do is have me contact Paul, who had to leave the meeting for whatever reason, uh, and Guilford, and just alert them to what the issue is, and that we would like to have some better understanding at a future meeting. I don't think we can do anything more about it right now.
Some people on the council have been asking when this is coming to the council, and my impression from today's discussion and previous discussions is it's not anytime soon. I mean, some people want to talk about roundabouts at the council, and my feeling has been not until we're done with this and it comes to you as a recommendation. And it looks like it's not coming to you as a recommendation for some time. That's the sense I have.
That's
Okay.
used to be.
So that needs to be communicated to some of the other folks on the council that you just hold your horses. This is going to take a while.
Jennifer?
Yeah, and I think, Bob's, filling us in on where JCPC is, that conversation
Right.
is also instrumental to our decision, our recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't make decisions. We're just a recommending body.
Exactly.
I'll have a conversation with Kathy Shane about it, because Kathy has, as the chair of the elementary school building committee, has felt that this was an issue that should have been dealt with earlier. And that's what she's expressed to me in prior conversations. So I think that she's in a position to be, from both committees that she's chairing, that we've talked about. she's actually an amazing person because she's chairing finance also.
Glutton for punishment, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you could point out to her, Andy, that we wouldn't be in this position if this were built at a different site. But that
Well, but I, she
just could
knows
make that point in passing.
she knows that.
You might remind her.
She knows that. We've talked about that. And it was a decision that was driven by, I think, the school employees and school members who were at the on the elementary school building committee, but they made the decision. It's done. So this is worth going back and talking about why they made the decision. But Superintendent Morris at the time came out in favor of it because I believe the major reason is that it's least disruptive for students during the interim period, because a building could
Could
be
stay.
a larger piece of land.
Right.
So I don't think that there's anything else that we can talk about that issue, which then brings us to item number 6, which is future meeting schedule. And so let me tell you what I'm thinking about for the next item that's coming up at 11 o'clock when we can really get back into the discussion with Northampton about their commission and experience with it. And what I was hoping is that we could move this along and get this to the council and done. And the way that I was thinking about it was that if we have the discussion today with Northampton about their experience, and then come back at our next meeting, which is on March 20th, and see if we can resolve the issues that we have with scope and membership. I think are probably the major issues that are outstanding, and then we would be, if we can come to an agreement on the major issues, we could do drafting and also send something to TAC, Transportation Advisory Committee, because they're very anxious that we do something and they want to know what it is. They're meeting that later in the same day, the 20th. So either Council Ryan or I could let them know what it is that we came up with on the 20th. And if, and then proceed to do some drafting of the 2 policies before the next meeting on April 6th. If we can move that quickly, Lynn is willing to put it on the agenda for April 21st for the council for a first discussion. So that would be an aggressive schedule. I don't know what you're thinking, if you think that's a realistic schedule. Councilor Ryan?
I think it's realistic. I mean, it depends on what happens today, clearly, and what we learn, and then what happens at the next meeting. If we can come to some common agreement, I think we've been moving towards something like that, but there might be some points that will be contentious and we'll have to resolve them. But if we could, at the next meeting, and have a sense of scope and a sense of membership, I've already got a fair amount of stuff that I've prepared over the time, both reporting to this body and also to the council. And I think I could get something, created that would, be our official presentation to the council by that date. I'd be happy to work on that with you, Andy. But I think this is realistic unless some surprise comes up today. And get it off our plate.
Yeah, and I'm trusting that everybody has thought about the issues that they want to raise, because we've talked about uh, the decisions that we will want, we feel comfortable delegating to a commission to make. And we recognize that there are things that the commission may make recommendations to the council on that we want to reserve for final decision at the council level. So it's what issues are getting to the, and I think that the other question is the process piece is when will we be able to clarify how citizen complaints are presented. I think that right now it's sort of there's no clear process, and that's one of the things that I think would be very helpful to see if Northampton has a system for presenting complaints.
So really, Andy, how the public interacts with this body is what you're saying? That's something that needs clarification. Yes. Both by us and then, okay, and hopefully we'll learn something about that today. Good.
Yeah, that was my main question for.
Yeah,
so that will be very helpful.
One thing I'm sorry, Bob.
Yeah, I think we should be clear that if we decide that the commission should make recommendations to the council, that we don't then send that to TSO for deliberation, right? I mean, we need to, the council needs to make a decision, needs to treat the commission like it would treat any other committee, and just make a decision based on a recommendation. I think we should try to clarify that. And I don't know, I'm not sure that every counselor would agree with this, but I certainly don't want to see us have a commission go through work and then just have to redo all of it in order to satisfy the council. So.
Certainly lighten the load of this committee in the future. Because we spend more time probably on traffic issues than we do on anything else.
Well, if we delegate to a commission of experts and they make a recommendation, I mean, none of us are experts in traffic management.
Right. Let's be right.
So, it's, I mean, we can refer to the committee, the council would do what the council is going to do, but I would strongly, we should try to make it clear, at least in my mind, that the commission is experts. We're hiring experts. We're getting experts to look at this, and we, if we don't listen to them, then there's no point in having a commission.
Right. One question, if I may, Rose, is how much initiative do we want to allow this commission? Can they do stuff on their own? Can they take up topics without prior approval from some other body? And that's something we haven't really talked about, and I think it's an interesting question. To what degree can they, make proposals, or can they? And again, maybe that's something we'll learn about today from Northampton's commission. But we need to think about to what degree, if any, we want them to be able to take initiatives. Think of the tax. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, no, I just think that I would personally think that they could. I think that's part of what Paul, when he, came up with the idea and recommended a commission, was that they could actually be proactive and look at traffic patterns and how, that they would actually be recommending policies. So I agree with Bob and with all of you that I would not want to see them spend a lot of time formulating a recommendation that gets sent back to one of the council committees. I've been struggling with that with the solar bylaw. I think, maybe that the solar bylaw working group could have spent a little more time getting it to where it wanted to go, but it got, sent to a council committee. I don't know that was, anyway, maybe I shouldn't say that publicly, but I don't know that has been the best way for that bylaw to, it went from experts to non-experts, and I wouldn't want to see that happening with this commission.
So Jennifer, imagine that they brought forward a proposal for parking in a certain area, and they can't make a final decision. In fact, this is something they've gone off. Maybe a citizen often presented a complaint or something, and so they make a proposal for a major parking change or a parking change to a particular neighborhood, and then that comes to the council. I'm almost in my bones at saying that council's immediately going to send that to TSO to discuss and evaluate. Can we avoid that? Should we avoid that? That's just, we can think about this, but if they do go off and do something on their own and then bring that to a council, I assume, and the council then looks at it and thinks, well, do we just talk about it as a council and then decide, or do we send it to TSO?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Yeah, I don't know.
Again, when I think of something like the parking restrictions on 3 streets in my district,
Exactly. Right.
that was more than 10 years of discussion, which is crazy. And it didn't impact anybody, not on those 3 streets. It just, yeah.
Right. But imagine that in another world, that's what they made that proposal to the council along the lines of what actually happened on Lincoln. And then the council looks at it. Are they going to just say, okay, vote up or down? Or are they going to say, no, we send it to our experts at
I think they
TSO?
should vote up or down.
We might like that, but I have a feeling that anyway. So that I'm not sure we can process it in such a way that that can't happen. I think Bob is acknowledging that, council's going to do what the council's going to do.
Right. I guess we can't keep it from doing that, but it would be the goal. I guess
Yeah, right. That's
yeah.
Okay. But we'd like to give them more initiative, if at least in theory, to do
I
things.
thought that was kind of the point,
Yeah,
that
right.
they would actually go, that they would look at what would
Mhm,
make traffic and parking flow better in town.
mhm,
That's,
mhm. And they'd have the expertise and some of the experience, et cetera, to bring some to bear, which we can't.
that's why I think who's on the commission is so important, or board.
Right. Yeah.
So, as far as the planning for the committee schedule is concerned, we had talked about also on March 20, having Jason Skeels come in and make a presentation about the road and sidewalk issues. And I think that that has been presented, and he's prepared to do that presentation on the 20th. Are we loading too much on that one meeting? Or do you think we can hit
Yeah.
comfortable with having that presentation and then trying to also put together our final recommendation without drafting?
I'm sorry, did you say we go to the council on the 28th of April?
20th.
First, I believe.
Oh, I don't have really, we have a council meeting? Okay. I must have an old calendar.
Let me look.
21st is Easter Monday, but that doesn't mean anything, right? We have
These days, no. Oh,
Things are the 7th and 28th in April.
yeah, it is the 28th.
28th.
Yeah, there's no,
It's Patriots Day on the 21st.
oh.
That's right.
that's right.
The 28th.
So how
Yes,
many meetings, how many of our meetings will we
because
have?
that's before May 1st.
We have a meeting on the 17th?
Well, I don't know when the budget will be presented. That's a major topic that usually consumes a council meeting to a large extent. Well, we'll have to leave that up to the vice president of the council to take to the agenda setting meeting.
So we meet on the 6th and the 20th, and then we meet on the 3rd and the 17th. Is that right? Of April. This body, this TSO, 3rd and 17th. Am I right?
Yes,
Yeah,
1st and 3rd, 3rd and 17th. Okay. And you want to get something to the council by April 28th. So we have 3
that was
meetings.
his most aggressive schedule.
Right. Is the 28th. And that would have to be at least, yeah. So we have 3 meetings to get to that point, right? Beyond this one, am I right? We meet the 3rd, we meet the 17th. And so the 17th would certainly still give us enough time to get something to the council by the 28th. And we also meet on, I'm sorry,
yeah, we meet on
the 20th,
March 23rd.
March 23.
Yeah, April 3rd and April 17th. So yeah, we have 3 meetings.
So back to your question, Andy, on the 20th, can we handle 2 things at once? Can we both chew gum and walk at the same time on that particular date? And if we have 3 meetings, I think we should be able to, but we won't resolve things, I think, on the 20th. You were hoping we could because you want to get it to TAC, which is another player in this chess game.
Yes.
And ideally getting it to TAC on the 20th would give them time to do what they need to do. But that's still more than a month before it has to go to the council. So if we pushed it off for a final resolution to our next meeting, it would be April 3rd. And then we'd have to go to TAC.
I don't know when TAC meets.
TAC, see, that's the problem, is TAC is also meeting on the 20th, but they meet in the afternoon. We meet in the morning. So, and it's late afternoon. So I think that TAC is having a problem getting
With quorum, yeah.
getting a quorum. So they want to move this along because otherwise they have to go and find somebody to recommend as appointee and go through that whole process.
Well, let's ask ourselves, what do we want from Jason? Jason, and we want to be respectful of his time, obviously, and we don't want to keep rescheduling him. I assume it's on his calendar at the moment for the 20th, I assume. We could put it off. But what are we expecting from him? He's it's going to be pretty much a straight up presentation. He's done this before. There's not going to be any surprises. It's a chance for us to ask him questions and get some clarity on our own end, maybe about what we're hoping to accomplish with this. But what are we trying to accomplish?
Let me just pause for a second. Council Lord, good morning.
Good
I
morning.
just want to make sure that you can hear and welcome. Sorry, what's happening is that we are discussing process right now. We approved and made a recommendation with your absence on the town manager appointments that he recommended to the Commission on People with Disabilities. And the additional thing is that I brought up is that the charter says that the council has to approve the appointment of somebody that is not a resident of the town of Amherst, and Pamela Nolan Young is not a resident of Amherst. So it's a double recommendation, both to approve the appointments and to approve her appointment, recognizing that she's not a resident of Amherst, and that was essentially what the motion was. And we approved the minutes of the last meeting.
Great.
and
Thank you. Thank you for catching me up, and I apologize for being late.
That's okay. So the discussion that has been taking place, we did some discussion about Southeast Street, but it was discussion only, and hopefully you'll be able to get a copy of the meeting and watch it and can catch up with that. And what we were talking about now is trying to schedule future meetings and see how aggressively we can work to get done with the recommendation for the Transportation and Parking Commission referral and get it back to the council. And so we were looking at dates, and that's where I think you came in.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
So Dennis, I think it's pronounced Lascalia, joined us briefly, and then she was going to rejoin at 11 because I see that Alex Jarrett is with us now. And morning, Alex.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
So let me introduce Alex, since he is here, and then Donna was on briefly and is coming back at 11, and so we can. I think we were going to do the presentation then, but let's go around the room and let everybody introduce themselves who you don't know. So start with Bob.
Yeah, I'm Bob Hegner. I'm on the town council, and I've been a resident member prior to that on the finance committee for several years. So I'm still a member of the finance committee.
George.
George Ryan. This is my 5th year serving on the Amherst Town Council. I represent District 3, and currently I'm the vice chair of TSO.
And you're vice president of the council.
Oh, that's true. Yes, I'm also vice president of the council. Forgot about that.
Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Taub, and I'm a counselor. This is my 2nd term on the council from District 4. So it's the district that is closest to downtown and the UMass campus.
And Councilor Lord.
Great. Thank you. My name is Hala Lord, and I'm a District 3 counselor, and this is my 2nd year on the council. My camera is off. I've been sick, and I just look a mess, so I apologize. You don't get to see what I look like just yet.
I think that Donna is here now.
I love the photo.
Yeah.
Hi.
So is it, let me start with is it Lascalia? Is that how it's pronounced?
Yes, Lascalia. Yep.
Okay, well, welcome to both of you. We just did quick introductions of the counselors who are present today. Guilford Mooring has not been present, and our town manager, unfortunately, is in Boston for personal reasons, and he was briefly with us, but has left. He's indicated to me that he's very interested in what you're going to be able to tell us about Transportation Parking Commission, and we'll be looking at the recording of this meeting to do that. So we really appreciate you being here, and I sent you an email explaining what is happening in Amherst, and we really appreciate the fact that we have neighboring community that has had a very successful, from what I can observe, Transportation and Parking Commission, and that it's been in place for some time. So we wanted to just learn a little bit from you about how your commission works and what the history of the commission has been, and the relationship to the council, and see if we can go from there to get some with some questions of issues that we're thinking about and what you might advise us on those issues.
Absolutely. Donna, would you like me to start it off?
Sure, Counselor, I think that would be great.
Okay, thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Alex Jarrett. I am the Ward 5 City Councilor. I'm in my third term. I'm also the City Council President, and I'm serving in this term as one of the two council members on the Transportation and Parking Commission. So there are 11 members on the commission. It was originally established in 2002, and then revised in 2014. And it's an advisory multi-member body. It's advisory to the mayor, but it is also advises the council, and that the council refers both refers items to it. Anything related to transportation and parking will usually be either referred to, or transportation and parking generates items. So, for example, many of the parking changes that we've voted on have been generated by transportation and parking, received a recommendation there, and then gone to council. And sometimes they've gone back and forth. Some things have gone over many years, but generally it's a fairly quick process. And we have, I think there's 4 resident members, 2 city councilors. It's actually in the code as 2 elected officials. So the mayor could appoint a school committee member, for example, if that was felt to be appropriate, or some other elected official. But in practice, it's always been a city councilor, and the typically the council president makes a recommendation to the mayor as to who should serve, and then the mayor makes that choice. There are city staff as well on the commission. We've got Director Lascalia, Director of Public Works. We have the police chief, the Director of Central Services or a designee, and a member of the Planning Board is one of the resident members, and the parking commission. Actually, it looks so the city. That's interesting. Madonna, is the Nancy Forrestal our parking administrator?
She is, yes.
Is that it says the city's traffic engineer and parking clerk shall serve as advisors to the commission, but I thought the parking administrator voted.
That's interesting. She does vote, and she's always voted.
Yeah.
We may have to look at that.
Well, we'll have to look into that. So we also have a subcommittee, the Pedestrian and Bicycle Subcommittee, and so separately appointed members, and anything related to pedestrian and bikes, we may refer to that. They also have a robust conversation about many topics as well, and can make recommendations on their own. What else to say about it? So we deal a lot with parking. We deal a lot with traffic calming. We have a traffic calming request system, which you can find on the website, where anyone in the city can fill out a form for a traffic calming request. The police chief and the director look at that, and then usually do a speed study. Then after we have that speed study, it comes back to the commission. We invite members of the public to comment. We hear, we hear from everyone, and then the director and the police chief think about how to implement and make a recommendation for implementation. And so I think I'll leave it there. I'm sure there's much more to talk about, but I'll let Director Lascalia fill in the details that I'm sure I've missed.
Yeah, just a couple of general comments. I think your experience in Amherst may be similar to ours in Northampton, that you have a lot of folks who tend to come to a committee meeting, or they're more willing to come to a committee meeting. Some members of the public would feel more comfortable speaking there rather than speaking to the entire city council, in a much more sort of public and formal setting. So we really like to get input and feedback from residents kind of at this level in a more informal setting, to hear their thoughts about how we can make improvements in their neighborhoods. I mean, parking is like a very, people sort of have very strong personal feelings about that in a lot of places. I'm sure Amherst is the same way. So, I think overall, I've been director since 2016. And, my experience with this commission is that it really provides an opportunity for people who otherwise wouldn't be heard to be heard about decisions which are going to impact them. And I think for me personally, that's really important, as we make decisions. I don't live, on this street. So like, I need to hear from the people who do, so that we can make better decisions. And that, I think, for me, is the most important piece of this commission. And even if it's just, one sentence or a few words, or just something that helps the chief and I, or the counselors, or our traffic engineers, or whoever, make a better decision, then it's worth the, 2 hours a month that we devote to the public meeting. So I think, that's the only sort of coda to Councilor Jarrett's comments.
So,
And
does the commission make final decisions, or are all final decisions made elsewhere, and it's just a recommending body?
It's interesting. We are an advisory committee. However, there's an ordinance, our Complete Streets Ordinance, which says that the Transportation and Parking Commission must give is the body that will give exemptions to that ordinance. So we have at multiple times had to vote on, oh, okay, we can't afford to have concrete sidewalks on both sides of this street when we're doing a mill and overlay on it. And so, the Transportation and Parking Commission then needs to vote to give an exemption. Are you aware, Director, of any other items where it's not just advisory?
No, it would just be related to that ordinance. So the Complete Streets policy has, quite a few requirements, and there are, I think, a handful of times where the committee becomes not advisory and actually, is making sort of policy around how we're going to reconstruct the street.
I would also add that there's it's just slipped my mind. I'm sure they'll come back to me. There's another area where we are making a decision. Anyway, when it comes back to me,
Roundabouts. So if we are looking at an intersection treatment and we are going to install a traffic signal, let's say, instead of a roundabout, the commission would actually have to make that approval, because roundabouts are the preferred treatment based on the Complete Streets policy. So I don't know if that's what you were thinking of.
Thanks.
Councilor Ryan, you seem to have a question.
Oh, I've got a lot of questions. This is great. I appreciate you guys taking the time. This is very helpful to us. We hope we can create something very much along the lines of what you've created. We are at the moment thinking of something where a fair amount of or at least some of the authority would go to our TPC, and the council would not be involved in everything, but some things would be referred to the council. But it sounds like in your case, except for these rare exceptions. Whatever you do is a recommendation. It goes to the council, and then they vote up or down. Is that correct, or is it the mayor? How does once you make your who gets the recommendation, and then what happens?
The
So
recommendation,
yeah,
oh, sorry, Counselor,
sorry.
go ahead.
Either the mayor or the council can get a recommendation from the commission.
Right. And in the case of the council, you have to vote on that, I take it, right? So you have to discuss it. In the
Yeah.
case of the mayor, whatever. Okay. So, also, if Donna could talk a little bit more, it's really, I mean, this is very encouraging to hear this notion of people being heard, because that's something that we all know as public officials, that often people tell to us, I just don't feel like I'm being heard. So this body seems to create a situation where people at least have the experience of being heard. How do they actually initiate that? Do they have to go online, and how do they get in on the agenda? How do they get, so if you've got an issue in your neighborhood and you want to go before your transportation parking commission, how do you actually do that?
We have request forms, so we have request forms for traffic calming, we have request forms for, if you want a parking zone or you don't like, how parking is oriented on your street. So the process is initiated by the public through forms on our website.
Online. Okay.
I'm the ex officio chair of the commission, and the police chief is the vice chair. So that's just by virtue of the positions that we hold. And we are the ones who set the agenda. And the reason for that is because we have to control the agenda, because we have to be ready to have a discussion about it.
Sure.
So, sometimes the loudest voices sort of feel like they, may want something in a particular location right now, but we make data-driven decisions, and we have to be certain that we are prepared to lead a community discussion on whatever street or whatever parking space or whatever it is. So we get the request, we compile the request, we collect data. If it's a speeding problem, if it's an intersection problem, we have to look at the crash data. And we don't like to have a public discussion on the area until we actually have data to reference. Councilor Jarrett will tell you that it didn't always used to be like that. We used to just sort of get these requests and like, okay, let's talk about it. But it's really hard to have an informed discussion when you're sort of dealing with people's perception of an issue versus like, what does the data actually say is happening on this street? So as you may be aware, a lot of people say like everyone's speeding, which is very different from we're going to hang this counter on a telephone pole and, watch what actually happens here for 7 days and then get a report that tells us, who's actually speeding and how many cars went by and, what are our percentiles and so on and so forth. So we found that that's a lot more effective way to run the commission. I mean, and hopefully you can sort of learn from, our past. You could do it both ways, but I'm not sure if the council agrees with me. I think he might, that it's probably a little more effective to do it this way when you actually have some data to rely on.
So if somebody, makes a request and nothing, it doesn't get dealt with for very good reason. You look at it and you think this is just, there's not enough back information, whatever, to merit a full discussion. So it just dies there. Or is there a back and forth? I mean, what happens if someone says, I have a concern about my street, and then they don't hear anything and it's not on the agenda? Is that just going to happen because that's the nature of things? Do they hear back from you? How does that work?
There are significant delays. I mean, we have traffic calming requests on, such a high percentage of our streets that there's probably like a 12 to 16 month lag between the time someone makes a request and the time this actually lands on an agenda. And that's just based on crushing volume of requests and operational capacity to sort of collect the data and then analyze it and then have an informed discussion about it. So we bring every single request that we receive forward. We don't just quash them. Could we, I think what we have worked on over the years is doing a better job of sort of communicating with people like, hey, we've got your request. It could be several months before we hear this. We haven't forgotten about you. And that's something like my office tries to manage better rather than people feel like they've submitted a request and it's like gone into a black hole. But we respond to every single request that we receive. We will put it on an agenda when we are ready to talk about it. And sometimes it lands on an agenda and it's like, okay, we've collected data, everyone's going 20 miles an hour. Could the people from the neighborhood please come to this meeting and tell us what we're missing? Like what, because sometimes the data doesn't tell the whole story, and that's really the benefit of this commission. So this actually happens a lot. We get a request, people are speeding, this is very dangerous. The data just simply doesn't align with what we're being told.
Right, the perception.
So
Sure.
now we need a little more information.
Mhm.
And that's why we hear everything. So, but that's also why we have such a queue, because
No, I
there's
can imagine. Right, exactly. We'd have this similar. And parking, similar. In other words, somebody says, I want to, restrict parking on my street, or I want to change the parking regulations. Again, that comes to you. And again, you look at how does parking get handled?
So parking's a little bit different. Sometimes we can sort of make those requests go away because it's a very like obvious, we just need to put a sign up, like it's
Take action time.
inconsistent. Like someone's pointing out an inconsistency in an ordinance, for example, so sometimes I can just resolve those as a work order, send an email to the requester and say, thank you very much, this is being dealt with. Sometimes it's like, we need a no parking zone here, or, we need seasonal parking there, or whatever.
Mhm.
That's a
Yeah.
much larger conversation that kind of goes in its own queue. There's not a ton of analysis we do on those other than to check existing ordinances and see what they are. But it's not like when we're doing a traffic calming request and we need to
Right. There's
collect speed.
not a lot of data. Right.
Yeah, it's a little different.
And I would add that those parking requests are done in consultation with the ward counselor for that area, because the ward counselor is often hearing from a variety
Yes.
of residents about the particulars, and can give feedback to the DPW, and then that can inform, how do we want to approach this? Because sometimes someone has a complaint about one street, but then you realize if you change that street, it's going to have these spillover effects. And so it's better to just say, we're going to tackle all of these streets and talk about them all at once and decide what we're going to do.
Good. Well, I have one more question, but I'm going to stop and let Jennifer ask a few questions. I'll come back to me later. Thank you both.
No, thank you, George. Those were great questions. I did want to go back to how, like when you just talked about with parking and working with the ward counselor, guess I'm thinking if residents in a council district have concerns and it just goes, they're told it may not be dealt with for more than a year, that district counselor is going to be hearing from those residents a lot. So because they may not want to wait a year to a year and a half. So how, with the parking, how does the ward counselor get involved? Is the ward counselor working with the commission? I mean, this happened in my district. We put in parking restrictions on 3 streets. And I worked, I brought that to the council so I just want to I'm going to get some clarification on when it's a very neighborhood specific or street specific issue. Is it the ward counselor interfacing with the commission?
This can happen a bunch of different ways. So the first way it happens is, a resident has a problem and they contact the DPW, or the resident can have a problem and contact the counselor, or the counselor can contact me because they've been contacted. So it can come at you from a lot of different ways. And then, ultimately, I think all of our jobs involve some level of triage. So, my job is to triage this stuff. So sometimes things are more urgent than other times. And because we have such a crushing volume of requests, what I have to look at is this unsafe? And by unsafe, I mean, can a fire truck get through here? Like, is this impeding emergency access? Is this a situation that is going to turn deadly for some reason that I can't anticipate or that I can't anticipate? Those requests kind of move to the very top of the line. There are often times where I will go post temporary no parking signs because a city councilor calls me and says, like, we have a really dangerous situation somewhere. So it's not that all of these things sort of languish. Many of them do, but depending on the severity and the potential public safety impact will depend on how quickly we move. But prior to us proposing any sort of change to parking, which again, people have very strong feelings about, before I even put this thing on an agenda, I would reach out to the city councilor and say, this is what we're thinking about doing. Do you want to poll the audience in advance, or, how bad or how good do you think this idea is? So I wouldn't just land something like this on an agenda without some interface. So whoever your chair of this commission is going to be is definitely going to have good working relationships with the counselors, because I think there's a lot of conversation that goes on before an agenda is even set. So that's my take. I don't know if the counselor Jared has any other comments on that, but that's how I run it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that if, another option is for a counselor simply to generate a change. However, it does not usually happen that way. I mean, in that case, go to council, get referred to transportation and parking, and then they would give their opinion. But typically, we work collaboratively with the DPW and residents and first discuss it at TPC, then generate an ordinance.
Yeah, well, that's also helpful to know, because we, had an issue with a preschool where we wanted to do traffic calming. And so that's something that you could put at the top of the queue if you determine that it's, a safety issue. That.
Yeah, I mean, I would just caution, all of the things we deal with are safety issues.
Yeah.
I mean, people are speeding, that's a safety issue. People are parking where they shouldn't be parking, that's a safety issue. So, we have very specific metrics that we look at around, how fast does this thing need to move? Do we need to stop what we're doing and pay attention to this? And I think that's sort of, maybe DPW director, traffic engineer decision making, because everybody's emergency is different.
Right.
Or sense of an emergency is different. So yes, location definitely matters. Like, is there a preschool here, for example? But I would just caution around sort of who gets moved to the front of the line and how fast.
Yeah. Okay, just two quick questions I have. Does the council, you said that the council president or because you have a mayor. So the mayor appoints the two council representatives or the two elected officials who don't have to be from the council to the commission. Does the council vote for those members, or like we will sometimes
No.
elect council members to serve on other committees?
Right. So no, in practice, the council president chooses the two councilors who will serve. And the mayor has always, in my memory, agreed with those changes and appoints them. But because it's actually a mayoral commission, it's the mayor who needs to appoint them. But the council does not vote to approve those councilors. We do for like the resident members. So that's interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Last question. For Miss Lascalia, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. So you said that when a request comes from a resident into the system, they do get a response, so it doesn't feel like a black hole. So is that how does that work? Is it actually an email that you respond and say, I received your request?
We do. We have a generic DPW email address, DPW info, excuse me, at Northampton. And so we have one of the administrators here just say, we've received your request. Thank you for contacting us. We will be in touch, when this item is placed on an agenda or when we have more information. And again, full disclosure, very long lead times on, placing these items on an agenda. I mean, sometimes it's like, well, we got this request in, 2023, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. It's nice to get a response, though. That's good to know. Yeah.
I have a comment around, we have the mayor council form of government, strong mayor. very distinct separation between executive and legislative. And I am curious with Amherst, with the town council, with the town manager, how that changes, what this commission, would this, commission be advisory to the town council, to the town managers? Is there, how do you see it structured in that way?
George, do you want to?
Well, those are very good questions. I don't know who wants to tackle them first. Obviously we're in the process of figuring this out, and this is extremely helpful. At the moment, what we're looking at or considering is giving the TPC authority in certain areas where they can just make a decision. End of story. That they have the and other areas which are maybe more politically fraught, might be one way of putting it, where you get a lot of feedback from the public. They would probably go to the council. So in some cases it would be advisory, in some cases it would be the determinative body. And we're trying to sort out which cases those are going to be. And essentially it goes to the council. And the council, at least in the case of where it's advisory, it comes to the council, not to the manager. The manager it is his body, so he will appoint the people on the commission. But when actual decisions are made, at least in some cases, it would require a council vote. In other cases, the commission could make the decision, and we're trying to figure out which is which. I have one further question, but Jennifer, why don't you go ahead and then I'll. Yeah, I don't.
Oh,
That
ask
answers the
your
question.
question. Go ahead.
Well, it's a complicated one. And you and I don't think we agree on this, or at least I'm very skeptical. And that's the idea of having counselors on this commission. It seems to me like a terrible idea, and clearly it's working for you. So convince me that putting counselors on this body actually is a good thing or productive, because my sense is that it would, certain counselors, at least in our form of government, would very much like to be on it, and others probably, really don't care. And I would prefer that there not be any counselors. So help convince me that there should be counselors on this body.
Mm. Well, we, as far as I know, have always had counselors on the body, and it's a conduit of information between the council and the the commission. As counselors have these relationships with members of the public as well, in a way that the executive branch staff or the residents may not. So I think that also brings this greater sense of information is being shared between the executive branch and the legislative branch. And I in terms of also, if we're when the commission has made a recommendation and then we're voting on it at council, we have two people who were there through the process and can give insight. All our ordinances are referred to our Legislative Matters Commission, a committee which I sit on as well. So we have this shared knowledge.
Yeah, I'll also add that whoever's going to chair your commission, if a counselor is not on it, and again, I don't know how this is going to be structured, but I'm just thinking about, as the chair of this commission, if Counselor Jarrett and Counselor Clemmer, who's the other counselor who sits on this, weren't there, I would have to do a considerable amount of work to sort of move the information out of TPC into the city council. So that might involve, some heavy memo writing or, more significant appearances at council to speak on the things that we have talked about at TPC. So I think whoever your chair is going to have to really sort of double down and do some heavy duty communication around this if you don't already have an interplay between the bodies.
I would say in our system, what happens is that you would be appearing before the council. And if I were a counselor, I would be, well, I don't know. I'd like to hear from the chair. I'd like to hear from the presiding officer, not from one of my colleagues about what transpired, but that's me.
Yeah, I think it depends on the how big a deal it is. You know, if it's a very minor change, it doesn't make sense to have Director
Absolutely,
Liscalia
right.
come before the council and have
Right,
to wade through hours of
exactly.
other business.
Right.
We already know, we've talked about it, and we can, but if it's something large, absolutely, and we would.
Bob?
Yeah, one alternative we have is we have members of the council who are liaisons to standing committees or other bodies. And that might be a conduit for information back to the council, because we do at every meeting, we ask if anybody who is a liaison has anything to report back to the council. So that's another, George, that's another option we should consider maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the reasons that this is being proposed by the town manager, and this came from the town manager, so this proposal was something that he brought to us and asked us to look at, is that there in our system currently there's a fair amount of duplication. Someone like Donna might end up attending, and she may still in Northampton for all I know, but she ends up attending 3 or 4 meetings on the same issue as opposed to just one meeting, make a presentation, end of story. And so a lot of our staff understandably feel like, this is like the third time we've had to go to a third body or come back repeatedly. And we're trying to create a system that's more streamlined and respectful of staff time and energy. So I hear you, Alex, and we're trying to fashion something that if it is small, it definitely doesn't involve anything other than, but that's the problem sometimes is what's deciding what's small
Mhm.
and what isn't. Yeah. So
Yeah.
but
And
one of the
our
main purposes is to try and address this problem of staff time.
Yeah, and in our case, that's usually determined. Well, if the director wanted to appear, she would let us know.
Mhm.
But the chair of our legislative matters committee or the chair of council would make that request, and so would determine the size, how important it was.
So what do you do with the larger issues that the ones that we read about in the Gazette and know about, like the Main Street redesign or some of the major roundabouts? I think as I recall, there was a controversy about roundabout just north of where Walmart is on King Street. Um, and, is the commission involved in those and how, if so?
The commission plays a role, but usually in that its recommendation about a particular element will be sought. Um, and I found for my history of those larger projects is that there is a much, like the planning department will do a public meeting or a public hearing. And there'll be more outreach, and it'll be at a time that is, designed to reach as many people as possible. Donna, do you want to elaborate? You've probably been through more of these.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the extent of the construction project we're talking about. I mean, the roundabout, any of these tip projects. I mean, Main Street's a tip project, so the state has their own process around this. They do a design public hearing at 25%, and that's your public input. And planning certainly, our planning department certainly does a lot of outreach on this. But in general, we do not bring road paving construction projects to TPC for discussion, except to the extent to which we'd be talking about exemptions to the Complete Streets Ordinance, or we would be talking about the imposition of traffic calming measures like speed tables, for example. So in general, the solicitation of input on, okay, we're going to come pave this road, how big would you like to see the tree belt? That's not something that we seek a public meeting for or conversation about a TPC. We have design standards that we design to, and that's how we design our projects. So I think the larger state-funded projects go through a state process. And then elements, as the counselor said, of our reconstruction projects may come before TPC. That's just the way we do it here. And certainly, you know, if you wanted to do something different, understanding that the input you get, you know, then may or may not have to be incorporated into design, and that can have an actual operational impact. Meaning, if you were going to have a conversation about how you were going to pave a street and you're going to solicit feedback from the commission or from people, then how are you going to incorporate that into your plan set, and how is that going to impact your bid schedule?
Jennifer?
Yes. So I'm a member of the committee who I feel strongly that there should be representatives from the council on a future commission that we would have, for the reasons that Alex, you know, part of what you articulated is that because the councilors do have a direct connection to the residents, to the community, although there would be residents probably on the commission as well. But I also, in Amherst, where the council is responsible for the public ways. So by this, we're basically, through this commission, be turning over, you know, that jurisdiction to some extent. And that, again, it would depend on whether they were just, this commission was in an advisory, made recommendations, or actually made decisions. So that's a big step for the council to turn this, some of the sort of control, so to speak, over the public ways to a commission. So our town manager isn't elected, so that is turning over to a non-elected official. If there was no elected officials on the body, that I think would, some of the councilors feel like that is relinquishing some of their authority over the public way. So I did want to ask, in Northampton, where the mayor and the councilors are both elected, is the executive and the council sort of have jurisdiction over the public ways, or is it one or the other? I'm just curious.
Yeah, and maybe Donna knows even more of how this is, but my understanding is there are certain issues like parking, where the city council has the jurisdiction. But as far as the design of a public way, you know, the council doesn't have to vote on a specific design. Like, this street is going to be 21 feet wide. I mean, the right of way itself, yes, because like if we had to do a taking, for example, or a surplus, but we don't decide how a particular street is, how wide it's going to be, how what kind of pavement materials, etc. And yeah, Director, do you have what's your understanding of that division?
Yeah, I agree. There's certain elements that the council completely controls, like who gets to park where, any interest in real estate. So if we were to do a temporary or permanent taking for some reason, or if we needed to lay the way out if it's not already laid out, for example, you know, I think there are ways that the council can weigh in. Pardon my use of homonyms there, but you know, like if we were to ask for an appropriation for paving, we could certainly have a discussion about, okay, well, what are you going to do on this street? But in general, you know, we have standards to which we design streets, and the council does not have direct jurisdiction over that. That's my understanding.
I guess that's true of us to some, but we literally vote on, like, if a sign, like signs that were pointing to the entrance to UMass, we had to vote on that. That we would be happy to give to the commission, but
There's poll hearings.
We do those poll petitions. Yeah, those are done in full council, which is kind of surprising to me. It seems like that's something that could really be delegated to a council committee.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been very much in favor. Maybe it's because I was on the select board before and I've done too many of them. but every time Eversource wants to change, put in a new new electric pole, or pull one out or move one, they have to come to the body that is designated as the keeper of the public way, which is now the council. It was the select board before. And you have these hearings, and I would be happy to relinquish that.
Why doesn't your TPC do poll hearings? Or did I misunderstand you?
The way this was explained to me is this is an interest in real estate, and any interest in real estate has to go before the council.
Okay, that's,
Because you're granting a it's the granting of a permanent easement. It's a location granting within public property.
so this is a legal, sort of, your attorney made this argument, or it's just, because one of the things we're hoping to get rid of are poll hearings.
I mean, there is an MGL around this. I
right.
don't know off the top of my head the exact language in the MGL, but I
Okay.
believe it does reference a governing body, if memory serves me
So
correctly.
we should take a look at MGL.
Yeah, I would check the poll petition MGL.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another issue, we have an ordinance that says that the Transportation and Parking Commission determines the location of bus stops. However, I got an opinion from our city solicitor that says you can't delegate that to an executive branch body. They can recommend the location of bus stops, but ultimately you need to vote on that location. So that was an interesting opinion that we're going to we have an ordinance review committee this year. I think that's one of the ordinances that we'll be looking at.
Okay, thank you. That's,
Jennifer?
yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, when the commission makes a recommendation to the council, do you vote on it as that recommendation, or does the council also have standing committees that you might refer it to? Because that's what we're sort of grappling with. Should the commission come to the council, or because we tend to refer, like if the planning board brings a recommendation, then we refer it to a council committee, and we're thinking we'd like to avoid that process. So I'm wondering how that happens.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, either the council can generate and refer to transportation and parking, and if it's an ordinance, it's also required by its rules to refer to legislative matters. So both of those would weigh in with their recommendation. Or the commission can generate an ordinance which then goes to council and then gets referred to legislative matters. Was that your question?
I guess what I'm saying is, after the
misunderstand?
recommendation is made, like it's gone to
Yep.
the commission makes its recommendation. Does the council ever then refer that to a council committee? I don't,
Yes, if it's an ordinance,
if it's,
it
the
would
ordinance.
have to refer
only
it
if
to
it's
our
an ordinance.
legislative
Okay,
matters.
okay, thank you. Which we would call a bylaw, yeah.
Okay. Right. Town versus city.
Right.
Keeping an eye on time, George.
I'm just wondering, for a question for both of you, and you're free not to answer it. But if given your experience and what you've seen and how things run, is there anything in particular you would like to change if you could, if you were like the master of the universe, about the way this is set up? Is there something in particular that you would think that we do this differently or better? Sounds like you're pretty satisfied overall with how this is working. And so I'm wondering if there's any particular tweaks that you might, suggest, or that you wish could be done differently, but probably can't at this point. Or no?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I feel pretty satisfied with the composition and the structure
Mm-hmm.
and the procedures. I sometimes wish maybe our decisions were different, or maybe I think about that there isn't. It tends to be pretty top down in terms of, the director sets the agenda,
Mm-hmm.
and we can, and maybe it's just that I need to make more recommendations about what I would like to see discussions happening on, and then I sort of, maybe it's more of a feeling that's how it works. But I mean, so maybe the request is that at meetings we could have general discussions about what do we need to think about, what do we need to talk about, what is our, what would help us generally to have discussions about that aren't just about a particular thing that's coming before us, but more of a general policy. And we do that to some extent, like we're thinking about the Complete Streets Ordinance.
Right.
That's just kind of running around in my brain.
So sort of long-term thinking, sometimes you, like often we find in this business, you're always worried about the immediate fire in front of you, the particular problem. And you were hoping that you'd like to see at time the ability to think about some larger issues and getting that before the commission and talking about it.
And so having a time of soliciting any input from the commissioners about what those topics should be.
Might be, sure. Okay.
What about speed limits? Do you, the commission deal with that? Because you have the police chief or designee in there.
Yes, any changes to speed limits would come to the commission, but usually there's a long and expensive process for changing them, in that we have to do an engineering study and then get permission from the state. So we tend not to do changes to speed limits. Do you want to speak more to that, Donna?
Yeah, I mean, most of our roadways have a regulated speed limit, the black and white sign, which is the result of a speed study and approval from Mass DOT, probably from 30 or 40 years ago. So in order to change, in order to alter that speed limit, as the counselor said, there is a whole prescribed process that you have to go through and receive DOT approval. So, I think that would be an example of a topic of conversation at TPC. I mean, we did opt into the 25-mile-an-hour statutory speed limit a couple of years back. That was discussed at TPC. But I mean, that would certainly be, something very appropriate for the commission to discuss. I just have one comment that may or may not be helpful when we think about what do I wish was different? I do think it's important to think about the amount of staff time that when and if you do create this commission, it is going to require staff time. And I don't, as we all know, we're all sort of at capacity or over capacity. And this takes a huge amount of my time, and I have staff who work on this. And I would just encourage you to be mindful of that, actually preparing an agenda, compiling all of the information, being ready to lead a productive, informed discussion. I mean, there's hours of preparation that go into these meetings that aren't necessarily obvious to the people, who might be attending. But there's a lot that goes into it. So I would just encourage you to be mindful of the impact this will have on your staff and sort of how you might mitigate that.
It is important. Thank you for bringing that up, because the current system that we have is very demanding on staff time too. And that's one of the things that the town manager and Guilford Mooring want to do, is to try and come up with a system that's more efficient for them. Jennifer, because I want to let guests go. And
Oh, you know what? I was just going to say there's a guest with their hand up. So that was the only reason my hand was up. I didn't know if you saw.
So,
I mean, what I meant to say is there's an attendee with the hand up. I don't know if you see that.
No, I don't.
So I don't know if you want to let that person speak.
No, I wanted to leave it within the committee. Well, this has been very, very helpful. I really appreciate you're taking the time to meet with us and to tell us about your commission. If we have other things that we think of, I can always just channel an email to you and do it that way. But I don't think that I have anything else that I was going to ask now. And Alex, I'll reach out to you anyway, because you raised a very interesting question. You and I should probably have lunch sometime and talk about some of the differences in our forms of government. But anybody else have anything? Otherwise, I really thank you so much
Yeah, thank you.
This has been very helpful for us.
Happy to be here. Glad to do some cross municipal collaboration.
Yes, but we really appreciate a lot of things that we do together because there's a lot of things like the weights and measures and all sorts of interrelationships that we have veterans. And I think that our communities really, as being the two largest in the county, it's good that we have this kind of relationship. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we'll let you go because I think we're going to probably adjourn now too, and which is we're required by our rules to take a vote to adjourn. So we'll do that in a moment. But
Okay.
all right. So thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
So I don't think that we have anything else. Does anybody else have anything that they want to say? George?
Not about what we just heard, but just about going forward. Do we feel like Jason, we're going to have Jason come at the next meeting is sort of the general consensus or no? Or you want to wait on that, decide later?
If he's set to do it, I'll talk to Paul because Paul was going to try and get us the recording of his last presentation, and he said that I don't know, I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, in terms of what you were saying, we're hoping that this next meeting would be a chance for us to digest what we've heard and also maybe come to some resolution. And we could just focus the meeting on that and give Jason another, just he could come back at another time. I'm wondering what the rest of you all think. Maybe that's what we should do. This MGL business has caught me by surprise. And so that's something I think we're going to have to take a look at. But otherwise, I'm wondering if, given what we've heard, people feel like maybe we should just focus on this next meeting and try and hammer out a draft and let Jason come some other time.
Good point. Bob?
I think it's going to take us 2 hours to do that. So we can do it over 2 meetings, or we can do it in 1 meeting. It's going to take us at least 2 hours to you know, it's going to take me some time to digest what I heard and think about what it means for Amherst, because I mean I'm coming back to the Southeast Street, and how would that be handled by a you know, differently if we had a commission? Would it really be handled any differently? I don't know. And so we need to think about that. The other thing that I really want to think about too is the communication with the residents. It sounds like there's a real good system for communicating with residents that we don't have. You know, it sort of goes into a black hole in Amherst. And I think we need to work on that almost separately from getting back to George's issue with, we're the outreach commission as well. How to get better communication with the rest, between the residents and the town. I think this is one area where obviously there's a lot of interest and a lot of back and forth, but we don't seem to get the same level of involvement with the residents that they seem to be able to get. So that's something we need to think about.
Jennifer?
Yes, I was picking up on what Bob just said. Even our C-click fix, there was talk that it would generate a response, but I know I put a request in 2 years ago and never heard anything, and nothing's ever happened. So yeah, I think, and that would be appropriate for this committee to address, how we have a system, even starting with C-click fix, when you put in a request, at least you get a response that it's been received. And I know that there was some correspondence that came before the council where somebody had put in a request and they never heard back. So they were writing to the council and to DPW. And then the response that came back was that the request for road improvement they had asked for was on a state street, not an Amherst street. So Amherst couldn't respond, but it would have been nice if they had heard that back to then go to the state. The other thing I was going to say is I think that's a good suggestion George has, is maybe we spend the next meeting, addressing the commission, because it sounds like we may want to hear back from JCPC. Is it a March 19th meeting? That may impact our conversation about Southeast Street. So anyway, I would just say I concur that maybe for the next meeting, we deal with the commission and try and get through that.
So the consensus seems to be not to uh, to ask Jason to come a little bit later, and that we're okay with postponing the discussion. I think that there's a lot of community anxiety and council anxiety about wanting to know how the decisions are made about streets, and what work will be done and the order it's done, and whether it's a public document. Should the list be public, and those kinds of things that we're postponing that discussion. George?
I agree. I think that makes sense. My thought is just that when that discussion with Jason takes place, I think it would be crucial that both Paul and Guilford be there, because a lot of what we're going to talk about is not just, the rubric they use to determine what streets get repaired in what order, but is the questions that Bob and Jennifer raised, which has to do with our ability to communicate this to residents and be better at that. And we need to hear from them as to the challenges they face in doing that and where the problems are. So it wouldn't be just him going through the metrics program they use and all that stuff, which we've already seen before, but it would involve, I think, a serious in-depth discussion about the issue of communication and making sure that residents are informed. And that would mean it would be more than Jason. It would have to be Guilford, I think, also, and Paul. And it probably would take
It's a question of both the amount of time. Did you think we should have a full meeting just on that subject, and that it needs to be one where we can be assured that all the people you mentioned are present? Okay, you and I need to take that up with Paul,
yeah,
as far as agenda setting for the committee. So I'm not sure. Maybe we just need time to think about what we just heard. The one thing that comes to mind is that when we come to a tentative recommendation, we may need to get to the question of whether it should be referred to KP Law, because are there legal issues that we're missing here? Because we just
Andy, if I, excuse me, I should have raised my hand. Andy, if I may, I believe this referral goes through GOL for clarity, consistency, and actionability, and the legal review is part of that process. So unless the committee has questions, substantive questions that need a legal input, then that would be done through GOL.
Okay, that's helpful. Because there was that whole thing with the poll hearing, we can go.
Yeah, I think, right, we could,
ourselves,
right, yeah.
But that's one that's been identified. There might be others. And we know the speed limit rule is, and, what she said about speed limits, what we discovered in our own investigation when we made the decision to do the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. And the question is, what
I
about?
was puzzled by the comment about it being expensive. I don't recall it. I don't know what that meant,
They
but
are expensive.
they made a big deal about the expense and why they didn't like to do it. And anyway,
You have to you have to get an engineer in, do a traffic study and all,
that's for your streets, right? And
Yeah.
so it was, yeah, and they just didn't. Okay, well,
it is expensive.
yeah, no, you're right. That is true. Right.
Then there's back and forth with the state and,
Right.
it's
Okay.
a
Time and money.
very
Yeah.
onerous.
Everything's expensive.
Yeah, but it's a very onerous process too. It's overly complicated in my mind.
But it is what it is because the legislature has done it. It's not going to change it. So we would know that if we're going to do something on speed limits, where to get it placed. But that's an issue. I mean, you start thinking about what do we hear from our constituents? Speed limits is one. Getting my road repaved because I'm sick of the potholes is another.
Sidewalks repaired, yeah.
Sidewalks is another. Parking. And if you look at I can just send you their complete streets ordinance. I've looked at it. It does set out the standards for sidewalks, and essentially saying when you repave this, if you're doing major road work on a street like we did on Heatherstone, they have a sidewalk policy that they would look at that is kind of the default, and default is followed unless accepted. There's a recommendation for exception to the policies, but it is part of the complete streets ordinance.
And we don't seem to be heading in that direction, or at least at the moment we seem stalled. And that's, again, maybe something at some point we can talk about as a committee, or maybe not, but they have it, but we don't. And there seems to be some resistance, rightly or wrongly, from DPW against moving forward on that. But it's also something we could talk to TAC about. But my feeling is it makes sense, but what do I know? They seem to work well with it, but it does limit and has certain prescriptive elements that I think our DPW is not too happy about. Anyway, it's that magic hour.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy, for coordinating that visit from
really.
Northampton.
Yes, thank you.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we should just see if there's a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. So let's take a vote. Councilor Lord.
Aye.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Bob.
Aye.
George. Councilor Ryan.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So we are adjourned, and thank you very much.
I'll get you the date that DPW is coming to JCPC.
Thank you. Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.